Sunday the 13th of June 1920. It was the day everyone had been waiting for. It was the day everyone had been planning for. It was the day of the unveiling of the War Memorial in Hintlesham, and everyone was there. The day started with a service in the church, and then everyone piled out. They were all there. The recently demobbed young men, the Bishop of St Edmundsbury, the rector who'd come over from Chattersham, girls in their confirmation dresses, the scouts, and Sir Gerald Main from Hintlesham Hall, who's also Lord High Sheriff of Suffolk. He said there's never been a day like it in the village's history. And that's Lieutenant and Adjutant T. Bidgood, late of the Ceylon Mounted Rifles, playing the last post on his oboe. Yes, everyone was there. The memorial stands 13 feet high. It's an Aberdeen granite cross and it sits on a York stone base. It was designed by the architect Charles Mee. He lived just down the road in Sproughton. It was designed very much as a one-off. There isn't one like this anywhere else in Suffolk. On the day of the unveiling, this memorial was covered in a Union Jack flag. The same flag 2 weeks earlier had draped the statue of the famous wartime nurse Edith Cavell in London. The bishop said the memorial served two purposes. Firstly, of course, to honour the dead, and secondly, to act as a warning and a lesson to those who survived. After that, Sir Gerald Main unveiled the memorial to the perpetual honour of the men of the village who had made the ultimate sacrifice. Then the congregation and everyone else who had turned up to see the proceedings sang "For all the saints." Lieutenant and Adjutant T. Bidgood, late you'll recall, of the Ceylon Mounted Rifles, made sure everyone was in exactly the right place before he played the last post. This is pretty much where Lieutenant and Adjutant T. Bidgood played his last post, and as the congregation looked at the memorial, they'd have seen the shiny cross and the York stone base, and facing them a blank panel. On the other three sides of the cross there was the dedication, and then two sides were devoted to the dead from the Great War, 23 names in all. But the panel that faced the congregation was blank. Little did anyone imagine that in less than 20 years' time the Second World War would be upon us, and names would start filling up that panel, and by 1945 there'd be 10 names added to the War Memorial in Hintlesham. There are 34 names on the memorial, but they're so much more than just names. They had lives, they had families, they had stories, they had histories. I'm going to pick out just a few. Jack S. Gant, or as he was born, John Samuel Gant. He was born in Watfield. The family, though, very soon came and lived in Hintlesham in Duke Street. Jack went to the school just down the road here in the village, and he became a labourer and a gardener. In 1912 he emigrated to Australia, and when war broke out he joined the Australian Army and ended up on the Western Front, as so many did. He was injured in the thigh in 1917 and was taken back to London to recover. After several months he was shipped back to the Western Front, where he won the military medal. It very much looked like Jack was going to survive the war. But in November 1918 he was injured again and sustained injuries to his shoulder and to his head, and ended up in hospital in Le Havre. Jack S. Gant didn't die of his injuries though. He died of pneumonia in something they called a pandemic. It was the Spanish flu. When the memorial was unveiled in 1920, there were 23 names. There was one added in 1924, and the name that was added was Wilfred Green. He served with the Suffolk Regiment and survived the war. He was a prisoner of war but came back to Hintlesham. But he was a damaged man, physically and emotionally. When he died in 1924, he was so loved by those in the village and his friends and family, they put his name on the memorial and they buried him as close to the memorial as they could, literally in its shadow. Finally, Frederick C. Balaam, Sidney J. Mower, and one other name, Sidney Wright, who's not commemorated here. He's commemorated in the church at Chattersham. They were three men who all served in the Suffolk Regiment, in the 5th Battalion. They all served in the Far East. They all became prisoners of war. They all became workers on the infamous Railway of Death. And they all died within weeks of each other and are buried in the same cemetery in Myanmar, or as it used to be known, Burma. For more stories about the men listed on the memorials in Hintlesham and Chattersham, please visit the website www.hintleshamwarmemorial.com. Those who served in the Far East, like Sidney Wright, Frederick Balaam and Sidney Mower, were often referred to as the Forgotten Army. But in another 100 years, 500 years, or even longer, if this memorial is doing its job, those who made the ultimate sacrifice and are named on that big block of granite will never be forgotten.